We're recording. We're live. I think everything is working. I think everything is working. Let me just make sure. Hi, guys. It's Nicole. And I'm just making sure everything is working. And we are live on Facebook. And I think we are. This is all good. Are we live? We're live. Okay. Hi, everybody. It's been like forever since I've talked to you guys. And so I'm happy to be here today. I've been out of town for 10 days. And so last week's episode of Stay Wild Child was actually recorded on YouTube. And if you missed that by chance, I hope that you will kind of dig back through the news feed in Stay Wild Child, and you will look for that recording, because Alwyn and I, we had such a great conversation. It was all about essential oils. And she was teaching us like how to create these beautiful oils and these beautiful like bath soaps that you can use and just, you know, kind of get those parabens and that kind of thing out of your life, any toxicities and all those chemicals and just like natural products. And so if you happen to miss last week when I recorded it, go back through the newsfeed and check it out. But I'm glad you guys are with us live today. And as always, this is recorded. So like if you jump on and you have to jump off because you got work or whatever, the recording will be posted in Stay Wild Child, as well as I always post this up on YouTube. So thanks so much for joining us. We're at episode 7 of Stay Wild Child. And I am with my friend Dana Blick. Hey, Dana.
Hello. So happy to be here.
I know. So, okay. So Dana and I have probably, I was kind of trying to remember how long we've known each other. And I'm thinking probably almost a year.
I would say like, yeah, somewhere around there. It's really hard to gauge time anymore.
Right.
No. But
I know. I
sounds about right.
About a year-ish.
Yeah.
We do this awesome intuitive class together. That is how I met Dana. And Andrea is actually, she's going to be on Stay Wild Child in January, which, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, so we take an intuitive class through Andrea, and it's such a cool, it's just got such a great vibe. We meditate together and we read some cards, and we, it's just really, really good energy. And so Dana is always giving astrology updates during our little intuitive class. And so I had a reading with her, and it was an awesome reading of my chart. And I really love astrology. I'll say that I'm a real novice at it. I kind of like, you know, I think I'm just kind of picking things up slowly, but I really enjoy the process. And so it was really awesome just to connect with you and build this friendship. And so I thought, you've got to come on and share with the Stay Wild Child, because so much good information. And so, but first, before we get into the astrology part, so I always like, so Stay Wild Child is helping women remember who they are before the world told them who they were supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So often I think that we can get caught up in society and, you know, things that we learned as children, and, you know, our parents' beliefs and our, you know, church and school and politics and all of that. And there's these pressures, especially, I think especially for women, there's so many pressures on how you're supposed to behave and act, and, you know, what defines you as a good wife, mom, all that kind of thing. And so I always kind of like, just because, you know, you're in this place where you're, you know, doing astrology readings, you're living your soul's purpose, and yet I'm sure that wasn't always the case. So yeah, so let's just back up just a little bit, and let's just kind of start, just kind of give me just like a little bit of kind of what got you into this, and you know, maybe a couple of struggles that were happening, you know, before that you started on this astrology path.
Oh, yeah, sure. And I love your message. I love that you're talking about this, because I am totally someone who was completely involved in what was being told or how you should be and what society says. And I still have remnants of that I'm, you know, trying to shed and let go of and release. I feel like I've come a long way in the last few years, but yeah, I mean, I definitely feel the societal pressures, and even things like, you know, I'm single. So there's all these pressures of like, why aren't you in a relationship? And why aren't you dating? And all of these other questions that come up. So I love just trying to go back and really exploring who I am and appreciating that about everyone else too, that they're on their same journey. So for me, I guess all of this started a number of years ago, really. Even back before I started seeing Andrea, I had started seeing an intuitive healer out of Kansas City. So I live in Dallas, and a friend of mine who lives in Kansas City was seeing a woman. She's fantastic. And so I was talking to her monthly on the phone. And this was really, it was nothing that I was ever going to do. Like, totally traditional upbringing. You go to school and you get a job and you work hard and you do all those things. I am a religious family. Like, I was brought up in the Catholic Church. And so, you go to church and you do the things. And at that point though, was burnt out on my job. I was working at a company that I felt like a cog in the wheel, and I was killing myself for it. And I had asked for help multiple times. As hard as it is for me to ask for help, I literally raised my hand and said, I can't do this job all by myself. And I got the typical, we're in a hiring freeze, hang in there a little longer. Eventually we'll get you some help. And after another 6 months of nothing, I couldn't do it anymore. Like, my body was shutting down. I'd had back surgery, a fusion surgery at 36. So like, my back had just said, you cannot carry the world anymore, essentially. Luckily, I've been fine since the surgery, but I 100% believe that was the universe telling me, like, if you're not going to stop, we're going to stop you.
Right.
After my back surgery, I was like, I can't keep this pace, and I can't do this anymore. So I talked to my family and I quit without a job, which is all, again, for a reason, because shortly thereafter, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And there was no way and I'm from Wichita, Kansas. There was no way I was going to be able to have the job I had and travel back and forth in the time I needed to help him out. I do believe God works in his own way. At that, literally the last day of my 2 weeks notice, my sister got laid off from her job. And about a month prior to that, my brother had been laid off from his job, and all of us lived out of state. So we all had that time to go back and forth and help my dad and be there with him. So it really was a beautiful blessing. I mean, we all were financially able to take that time off, which was very lucky. But we were able to kind of go that back and forth. And I was having a really hard time, really struggling. A lot of my identity had been built up in my job and my career and who I was.
Right.
And then I didn't have that anymore. So it was like, who am I? What am I doing with my life? What should I do? And then you have the emotional stress of the family situations happening. So in that time, I kind of was just like, I'm at a loss. I don't know what else to do. So I had gotten in touch with my friend in Kansas City, and I said, give me your lady's name. Like, who do I talk to about this? Because I'd seen such great changes in her and the things she was struggling with. So I was like, let me give this a try. And I worked with Kathleen for about 2 years, which was amazing, just long distance. And in that time, my dad transitioned over. It was about a year or so, and he passed on. And I found a new job, and I, manifested a new townhome and all those wonderful things, which are great. And then it was but I kind of felt like I was a little bit plateauing. I was like, well, what's next? Like, I'm kind of back in marketing, which is fine. I like it fine, but I don't really feel like I'm getting fulfillment out of it like I used to. And that whole process, that year of my dad, had changed me a lot in a lot of ways. And I was still trying to figure out, okay, well, who am I and who do I want to be? And it was through a very, again, the universe. I was having a happy hour with one of my vendors that I was from the job I was working at. She was one of my media vendors, and she's like, let me take out her drink. And I was like, okay, cool. And she, we were just sitting there chatting, and she said, so I'm doing this kind of weird thing. And I'm like, ooh, I love weird things. Tell me all about your weird things. Yeah. And she told me about Andrea. And I was like, oh, that's not weird. I see somebody in Kansas City. And so I was very curious to see about what is it like having the in-person experience versus on the phone.
Right.
Feeling a little bit plateaued with my work, and I'd made a lot of progress with Kathleen, but you kind of start to outgrow people sometimes and need to level up in some way. So I had made an appointment with Andrea, and it was an amazing experience, and I can't wait for all of your audience to get to chat with her in January, but loved it. And through the happy hours, through trying to tap into my own intuitive gifts and try to really figure out again, what's my soul's purpose here, and really striving more for that versus the outward, okay, I have a job, I have a house, you know, working on my self-esteem, all those pieces are important. But I was kind of felt like I was missing a little bit. So in this work with Andrea, this whole process, during this time, I'm also exploring other modalities. So I started seeing an acupuncturist, you know, at that time. And through the acupuncturist, she had talked about her astrologist. And I was like, oh, tell me a little bit more about that. I've always read the horoscopes in the back of magazines. Like, what's that about? And she's like,
Yeah.
no. She's like, this is the real deal, not that stuff. And I was like, okay. So I was really curious. And so she gave me her information. And I had my very first astrology reading with Diane Eichenbaum. And she, gosh, I think now she's about 86. It was a couple of years ago. She's been an astrologer for 40 years. She's published books.
Cool.
She was super cool. And she lives like in uptown Dallas. And I was like, what? That's so crazy. Yeah, so she was like a beautiful person. And I met at her apartment and had a reading. And it was really cool. And you record the whole thing. I always recommend my clients to record it as well if they can. And you know, it was something fun, and she was spot on with everything that she told me. And I was like, well, this is cool. And she had made a comment that I'd completely forgotten about during the reading that I listened to, you know, months later. She had said, she's like, you know, if you're interested in this, you should study metaphysics. And I was like, well, what is that? She's like, well, you know, it's like astrology or tarot or other things. She's like, you could turn it into whatever you wanted, but you'd have abilities in this. And I was like, ha ha ha, whatever. You know, I didn't think anything of it. I'd completely forgotten the whole comment because we moved on to other topics. Sure. And, you know, it was about a year or so later that I had gotten my sister. I was like, oh, you should go have a reading with Diane. It was really cool. You know, I bought her book and I packed it away and I didn't read it again. And it was like I was unpacking some random box and I found the book that I'd purchased. And I was like, oh my God, I never read this. So I pulled it out and I read it and I was like, this is really cool. And I told my sister she needed to go have an appointment, which she did and loved it. And so I was like, well, maybe I need to check in again. So I had a second appointment with Diane and went back and had listened to the first recording and then had a second appointment. And that's when really the seed was fully planted. Like it was planted subconsciously about a year prior to that, but it really kind of got like fully back there. But, you know, I'm still in you get a job, you go to work, you do the traditional things that the world tells you to do. And you grew up in a family that this is like not really acceptable or the thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, yeah, I totally know.
Yeah. So there was all of those stories running in my head at the same time. And I'm like, well, I can't really do that. I don't really know how that would work. And, you know, so again, YouTube, my friend, I watched a few YouTube videos of readers and kind of learned a little bit more about it. And I started looking things up online and, you know, just kind of dabbling a little here and there. And it was when I had a reading, a tarot reading with another person, another intuitive in the area, and just trying, again, I'm just kind of exploring all different avenues. And I was like, I want to know what my purpose is. Like, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? You know, not necessarily career, but like, what am I supposed to be doing with my life?
Right.
And she kept saying, she goes, well, you know, she pulled the cards and she says, you know. And I was like, well, no, I don't, because that's why I'm here. I want you to tell me. She's like, I can tell you, but I really want you to say it out loud. And I said, okay. I said it. I was like, I think I want to study astrology. And she's like, exactly. That's exactly what you should do. And this is what this card says. And this is why I know this is something for you. And totally like freaked out, right?
Yeah.
So I found a local kind of astrology 101 class and went to it. And it was good. And I learned some basic things, which was really nice. But it, you know, really kind of started piquing my interest in learning more. So, you know, that was like a weekly class for about a month, and I kind of got some good insights into things. And so I happened to mention it to Andrea. I was like, I think I'm kind of interested in learning more about this. And she gave me a couple more resources, a few other individuals who do online courses. And so I looked at a couple different options and found a teacher, Annie Botticelli, who really resonated with me. And if you are interested in that, look her up on YouTube and her website. She's got great information out there. And so I took and enrolled in a 6-month course to like really dig into all the ins and outs of it and learning everything behind it, how long it's been around, you know, how it's used, all the things you can use it for. Like I had no idea all the different ways you can use astrology in your life. And it's
Right, right.
been a beautiful gift. And in September is when I actually launched my official business and my website and booking and all of those good things, and started seeing clients like you. And it's been such a gift. Like, I enjoy every reading. I feel like anybody gives me their birth information, they've given me a piece of their soul in a way, because I can like look at all kinds of things. And I feel like that's such a gift and such a trusting thing. And I take that so seriously that it makes me so happy. So I still do my regular nine to five job kind of thing. Someday, hopefully I can bridge this into more permanent activity, but I just get so much love out of it and so much insight and understanding and guidance that I'm like, even if it doesn't, like, I'm just happy doing it.
Ah, yeah. And that's what it's all about, right? Just like, yeah, you're just letting your soul shine.
Yeah. And it was, and it comes from, all these things always start with some sort of really hard time in life. It seems like, you kind of have to be pushed to that breaking point almost to force yourself to change in so many ways. And you could see those times happening in my chart. Like, this is what's happening. This is why you need to go through this. And having that understanding, I look a lot at astrology, and I think we talked about this. This is almost like a weather report in a lot of ways. Like, you're looking at the potentials of what can happen, and you can choose to listen to the weather, know when it's a nice day, and plan to be outside. Or when a storm's coming, and so you make sure your house is safe and secure. And oftentimes when those storms pass, they're not as bad as you think they were going to be, because you've done all the preparatory work. And you can choose not to listen to the weather, and you can let the storm come and it blows your house down, or you can completely miss that beautiful day outside because you decided to do other things indoors. So it's not that it's a bad way, either way to go. You just have a choice. And I would rather have an idea of what's happening before it happens.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So you talked just a little bit. I had a couple of things that I thought of while you were speaking, but you talked just a little bit at the beginning about the friend who kind of opened your eyes to this to begin with. Were you seeing her in person, or was she on social media and you just kind of like saw her life kind of opening up and transforming? I'm just curious.
Well, she's one of my dear friends from college. So we've known each other for a long time and chat on the phone, or I go see her at least once a year, sometimes twice, try to see each other. And I remember, because this all started for me in 2015. And it was about probably 2013. I was one of my visits to see her. And she was telling me that she started seeing an intuitive healer. And in my head, and I've told her this, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, sure. But I'm like, but it's my friend and I love her very much. I'm like, whatever is going to work for you, whatever is going to make you feel better. Cause she was struggling a lot with, potential motherhood. And as my friend, I would look at her and say, oh my God, you're going to be like the best mom ever. Like, completely. I know you well enough to, but we don't always know that about ourselves. And so it doesn't matter how much somebody else tells you something, you have to find that truth for yourself. Right. So I thought, whatever's going to help you get to your end goal, I support you. I love you. I think it's crazy, but I'm not going to tell you that out loud, kind of thing. Yeah. So, but it was over that, she would casually, whenever I'd visit with her, she would casually tell me, oh, Kathleen told me this, or I'm trying this now, or this is what I'm doing, or how I'm feeling about it. And, sometimes I would ask, I was like, so how are you feeling, like, more ready to be a mom? Like, how do you feel things are going? And it was about after 2 years of this, just now and again, getting a little hint here and there. I'm like, I saw such a change in her, such a transformation of her own beliefs about herself, and her own opening up, and her own healing that she'd gone through the whole process. And I was like, well, that was just beautiful. And I'd seen such a lovely change. And of course, she is a mom now, and she is the most amazing mom you could ever imagine. I'm like, you need to like give classes on how to be this way, because she's so good. But seeing all of that, and how it, how she was able to do a lot of self-healing ultimately in those areas of her life that she felt like she needed, that I was like, I was at my lowest of low, and I am a naturally upbeat and positive person. So for me to be depressed and low, I was on Prozac and Xanax, and I had been taking pain meds for like a year for my back, like so many drugs, that I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I really just don't want to do this anymore. And so I had seen for a time a traditional therapist, which I fully embrace and promote and love. You know, it works for a lot of people. But I gotten to a point where I was like, I'm like, I don't know what I can rehash anymore. And I was so confused about what I was feeling too at that time. I wasn't even sure how to express it, that, you know, I was like, I'm willing to try anything. And my dear person who I love and who I trust had, you know, wonderful experience and has, you know, done a lot to improve herself. I was like, let me give this a try. You know, what could it hurt to have one call?
Yeah, exactly. How cool is that, she planted those seeds and like a couple of years before, they came to harvest. I love that process, you know, just like visualizing, you know, those seeds going into the ground and they just kind of start sprouting up. And then when you're finally ready, you know, they just really start blossoming. So, how cool is that?
It was so cool. And it took time. Like it took a long time. Those seeds were planted subconsciously and I didn't even know it for the longest time. And then it was really, you know, another reader who said, you have to say this out loud. Like you're going to have to verbalize it. You know, you have to say what you want. You have to verbalize it. And when I did that, you know, it was still a little bit like, what do I tell people? How do I say this? Like I've said it to the stranger, but can I say this to people I know? And really the more that I would talk about it, the easier it got completely. Like, you know,
it's just that practicing of, you know, opening that throat chakra and just allowing yourself to speak, because I think that we can so many times like get in the idea that everyone is judging us. And so if we vocalize it, I don't know, what are they going to do? Cast stones at us or something? Burn our house down? I don't know what things we imagine in our minds. Disown us? No.
True. You know, and you know, it took a little bit to tell my family, you know, here's what I'm doing. My sister is super supportive. She's like, all in, let's go, let's do it. You know, and you others were a little bit slower, but once I kind of, you know, gave a reading or talked to them about it, they're like, oh, well, that's really exciting for you. Like they were, you know, happy for me, whether they believe in it or not, doesn't matter. You know, they were being supportive. And then when I finally like made the leap for social media and said, hey, I'm doing this now, and if you are interested, come follow me at This Astro Life on Instagram, you know, put that post out there. I got so much love from people. I was shocked. Like people I hadn't talked to in years, you know, you just follow you on social media, and they were just so supportive. And it was a beautiful kind of thing. I was like, okay, it's safe to say these things. Like we're at a time now in life where it's okay, or just a time in the world that you can start talking about things again that don't have to be.
Agreed. Yeah, people are opening up. I think they're really opening more to receiving, because, you know, even in my own family, which I was raised, you know, very similar to you, super Christian background. And so it was now that I've been talking about these things for probably the last couple of years, just being more open and more open and more open, it's been really well received. It was funny. My mom actually, she said, have you watched Shine on Netflix? It's the Reese Witherspoon. Have you seen it?
I haven't, but it's on my list. I just haven't watched
it. It's super cute, super cute. She does a great job, and the interviews are great. You know, Dolly Parton's the first one, and they're great little interviews. And my mom goes, oh my goodness, she sounds so much like you. She goes, I really liked it. And it is just funny because it's all about, you know, consciousness and aware and awakenings and all of that. And so I was like, oh, okay. I'm planting little seeds. Yeah. Okay. So something else you mentioned was that the different, you may not have used this word, but the different modalities of astrology. So tell me in other areas where it helps versus like just knowing your chart and kind of knowing where it leads from day to day. So go into that just a little bit.
So I always think the first step, if you've never had a reading before, is to have your natal chart read. Like that is the very first step. That is essentially your playbook or your operating manual for life on Earth. You know, this is how you see yourself. It's how others see you. It's how you love. It's how you, what your drive is and what energizes you, all the different parts of you. So I think that's really important to first understand that piece. After that, you can use astrology in so many different ways. It can be used in a predictive way. That's kind of like the weather report I was talking about, to understand what potential energies are coming at you, good or maybe not so good. You can use it for, how to, for health reasons, like what are the right exercises you should do? What kind of sleep do you need at night? What kind of supplements might you need to take? So all of that can be influenced from a health perspective. You can definitely use it from a work, like what kind of career should you look into? It can give you like hardcore, like these are the types of jobs. You can go all the way to that level, or it can be a little bit more subtle and say, okay, you should definitely work with people, but it can get pretty specific on things. In fact, a reading I recently did, we were focusing on her career, and she was wanting to make a change and not really sure what to do. And so I gave her a few ideas, and she'd already had one in the back of her head, what she was kind of being drawn to. She didn't tell me what it was, but I kind of laid out, well, you need to look for this, this, and this, 1, 2, 3 in your future job. I think you would really benefit from that. And after the reading, she sent me an article on what she was looking at doing. And I'm like, this is exactly perfect. Like exactly what we were talking about. So, I mean, you find out those things that, you know yourself, you already do. This is just another way of saying it out loud and giving you permission to be that person in a lot of ways. And to say, it's not crazy for you to have this idea, or it's not crazy for you to want to go and do that, because you have that ability already here. It's already in your chart in a lot of ways. You can use it to, I love this, the synastry charts, which is combining two people together. A lot of times they're used for romantic partnerships, but they don't have to be. So you can use them for coworkers. You can use them for friends. You can use them for parents or children. Any relationship, to understand where there's ease and where there's difficulty. So if you had, a group of people at work that you wanted to, I read charts for, to understand how they can work better together, like work habits. You can look at a chart for that. You can use it for there's other astrologers who use it for world events. So predicting, country downfalls or political upheavals, or, there have been astrologers in the US who are predicting the President Trump, not necessarily him per se, but a person like him coming into power in the US. That's been predicted for years. So there's people that use it on a global scale. You can even use it to find your lost keys. Like literally you can, looking in your chart that day to say, okay, where would I have left my keys? I can find in a chart where that might be. And it's the first place you check, So there's all different ways to use it. What I have found interesting in what I have been, learning and reading, because this is one subject that I will study the rest of my life and never know it all by any means, was that, there were a lot of astrologers in our history that you didn't know were astrologers. For instance, Carl Jung, who is considered one of the founders of modern day psychology, an astrologer. And a lot of the personality tests that were developed, or that he developed, came from astrology. So it's been really interesting to see that, that was at a time when sort of science had taken over, and astrology was viewed more, as artsy or woo-woo, although it is based in mathematics, so there is science there. But it's amazing. Those archetypes that he talks about in a lot of his personality tests come from astrology. And there's no personality test that you can take that will give you the whole person the way that astrology does, that you can look at someone's chart and see the whole person, instead of just like, what's your communication style? That's usually one test will tell you that. Or, what's your love language? That's another test. I can look at a chart and tell you all those things about yourself without having to answer any questions. And it doesn't rely on your mood that day or how fast you answered the assessment. Like, you don't have to do anything. You just were born. It's all there. So I love being able to use it for those different ways, to help people in whatever's most important to them. Sorry for my dog.
Absolutely. That's all right. I have to lock mine up in like the far bedroom. Exactly. It always happens. It's like, oh, you're talking to somebody? Let me talk to you. That's right. So when you're looking at your astrology chart, what do you find is kind of when they put out like kind of the general, okay, let me see how to say it.
Oh, sorry.
So I have my sun sign, I have my rising sign, I have my moon sign, and then there's another one too. What's the other one?
There's all kinds of things. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And there's houses. I know there's all kinds of things.
All the things.
Yeah.
Okay. So probably the three most important signs, if you're going to look at a horoscope,
Right.
most people
are horoscopes valid? I mean,
they are. I would hold, please. I have got to shut that dog up.
Okay, go ahead. You do your thing, girl.
Take you with me through my house.
Okay.
So, actually, I'll just shut the door. He can be shut out. So, the three most important that you're going to want to look at from a horoscope, and I would say horoscopes, find some YouTube people who give you the full in-depth things. I think when you're looking at something in the back of a magazine, it's not going to give you a very full picture. It's going to be it's a paragraph. It's not really, I can't even in a social post write everything I want to write in a paragraph about what's happening. So there's just so much information. So I definitely recommend looking at somebody, find a YouTube personality or somebody you like. I'm trying to decide if at some point I want to do that as well, just to give people that information. So maybe.
Well, you're really a natural on camera.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I just have to get there. I'm hoping all this Capricorn energy that we're moving into is going to help spark some action. But I would find somebody who's going to give you a little bit more detail. Like I said, Annie Botticelli is my teacher. She does YouTube videos free, every month. Her aspects and how she reads is very much like a teacher. So you're going to get a mini astrology lesson. It's going to be very in depth. Some people like myself love that. Others it might be like way overwhelming. So I just recommend finding somebody you kind of connect with and like on YouTube, and there's plenty of them out there.
Yeah, I've got several of them that I follow. So yeah.
Yes, exactly. So in that sense, yes, those are pretty accurate. Like I said, I wouldn't bother with what's in the back of a magazine because that's just for fun. I mean, if you like it, it's fun, great, read it. But if you want something a little bit more in depth, I would go there first, or bloggers write a lot too. So you're going to want to pay attention to your sun sign, and that's what most people know. It's based on the date you were born. Right. But you also need to look at what your moon sign is and your rising sign. And there's so many free websites out there. You can plug in your birth date and information, and it'll give you your chart. You may not be able to read it, but you can find the moon, the symbol that looks like the moon, and you can find your rising sign. They'll usually spit those out for you, so you at least have some free resources to understand those three things. If you can find those three signs and listen to the horoscopes for that, that's going to give you a fuller picture of what's coming for you. People are snowflakes or thumbprints or however you want to look at them, and there's so many complex layers to us that you want to listen to all three of those, because that will give you the more complete picture for yourself. Because it's not just one thing, we're lots of things. Some of us, like myself, my moon and my sun are in the same sign. So I only have to listen to two, which cuts down on the time. But somebody's got to listen to all three. And there are the rare occasions out there when somebody's sun, moon, and rising can all be in the same sign as well. So you might only have one. But those are the things you can look at and find online. Now, there are a couple other personal planets that in a natal chart reading we would look at, or you'd look at always in every reading. Those are the ones that really talk about other aspects of yourself. So you wouldn't listen to a horoscope or read a horoscope for these, but they do impact the more holistic picture of yourself. So your Venus is how you love and how you treat money. Mars is our drive and our energy, what gets us going. And then you also have Mercury, which is your communication style and your learning style, how you think in the world, how your brain works in a lot of ways. I love to look at Mercury in children's charts to help parents understand learning. So my nephew has a little bit of ADHD. And in looking at his chart, I was like, no wonder I can see all these influence in his chart that would basically indicate that he has a hard time focusing. So he might need to find some other strategies for studying than what they traditionally teach. And so his parents have gotten him some tutors, and he's working on some things in that aspect. So I love looking at some of those ways of, how our brains work. I can use it, astrology you can use for that. Like, let's identify what's going to be easy for your child and what might they have some difficulty at, so that you can create strategies and how to, ease that for them as much as possible.
Wow, that's really interesting. So is there a if you seem to like relate more to, like, I feel like I kind of relate more to my rising sign than I do my sun. Now I still have a lot of my sun in me, you know, in different areas. And then my moon sign is also in there, but I feel like I just kind of like, it seems like my personality is more in my rising sign. And so is that is that because of a different time that you're born, like in your sun sign, that would lead you more towards your rising sign? How does that?
It's very personal, honestly.
Okay.
There's a lot of people out there, if you've ever heard the term cusp, you're the cusp of a sign. Um,
Ah,
a lot of people have cusps in their chart, and that means you're very close to being between two signs. And in that, you can have the energies of both. You can have
ah,
one or the other or both. So you might be a Pisces on the cusp of Aries, but you feel more Aries than you do Pisces. That's okay. Like, go with the Aries reading then, if that's the way you feel about it. The
right.
same thing kind of with your rising and sun. Like, if you feel like you relate to one more than the other, totally lean into that. That's totally fine. What I would say, what would happen as far as like, it's not really a time of when you're born that might indicate, but what happens as we get older is that certain signs can shift in what they call a progressed chart. So you're
Ah,
still all the things you are when you were born, but we all have life experiences, and we all, you know, grow hopefully and learn and evolve as people. And what's interesting in a progressed chart, this is a little bit, it's really actually not hard to understand, but it's hard to say.
okay.
So
Okay.
you look at a chart, basically it's considered a day for a year. So when I run a progressed chart, it looks at the sky at the place you were born, um, however many days after you were born. So let's say I'm looking at somebody who's 30 years old. I would run the chart for her same location, even if she doesn't live in that city anymore, her same location, but I would run it 30 days after she was born. And that 30 days would represent where she's at in her 30th year.
Oh,
So, yeah, right. It's really cool. So it's not going to say that you're a different person, because a lot of the planets don't move that fast. But what I would look for in a chart is, has the sun's position shifted signs, or has the moon shifted signs in any way? Because that can also have an influence on us. So I just had my 41st birthday. Woo! And so I was looking at my progress chart,
yeah.
and it shows my sun has transitioned from Sagittarius into Capricorn. I'm still very Sagittarius. I still love to travel. I still love to do those kind of fun things. But, and obviously, like, love studying and learning and anything metaphysical. But at the same time, I have a lot more of, you know, that patience that I didn't have in my youth. And I have a lot more, you know, steadfastness and a lot more determination for the things that I enjoy and love. I'm going to be determined to learn and do more things. So there's aspects of me that aren't as Sagittarius as they once were. But I still am that. It's still a component of me, but I also have this other piece of me too. So we would look at your progress chart, Nicole, and say, okay, like, where were the shifts at this point in your life? We'd look at the sky, however many days after you were born, that would represent the year you are now. And we could see, like, where there's shifts in the moon that maybe are in the same sign as your rising sign, where you feel like you're more relating to that now because there have been shifts in your evolution that are kind of steering you in that direction.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
crazy, right?
Yeah, it
I
really
mean, like,
is.
people are complex. There's like, no, oh, here's your chart and you're done. It's like, no, here's your chart, and then your chart's going to evolve a little bit. It's still true. I love the analogy my teacher uses. If you imagine yourself as a house, like a physical house, there's windows on all different sides. You know, your sun sign looks out one window over the beach, and the moon sign looks out over the mountains. So it's still the same house. It's just different views out of that house. So it's
Yeah.
all still true. It just kind of where you're at in life and where it feels like it has the most impact.
Wow. Okay. So now that I feel like, my friend Kathy is actually the one who got me into astrology, and we are both Virgos, and we're 7 days apart, same year.
Mhm.
So yeah, so we've always, and she's always been really into astrology. So she did a natal chart reading for me, probably 2 or 3 years ago. She did such a great job. And she's just learned through the years just by following other astrologers and, just kind of picking things up. And she's really good at it. She really reads from an intuitive place. Then I had a reading with you and another natal chart reading. And so I think that I need to get a little deeper. I want to know some more things now that my mind's kind of opened up and I'm starting to, understand, things a little bit more in that arena. So I love it. Cool.
It's really cool. So the progress chart, like I said, I wouldn't read it the same way as you read a natal chart because that is who you are. But I would look for certain things in that would indicate maybe a shift in a little bit in your identity, but a shift in how you react to the world more than anything. So like I said, I have more patience now than I did before. Part of that is, aging, but part of that is the shift into a more earthy sign versus my fire kind of going crazy. I've slowed down a bit in that way, and we look for those things. So I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to repeat a natal reading, but we certainly could look at the progress chart and see where those influences are. Other things happen in our lives. Midlife crisis it came from astrology. It's basically when certain planets are opposing each other, Saturn square, Uranus opposition. You have other things, like what they call the Chiron return. Lots of things in there, but that happens right around 50, 51. And it's sort of that place in your life where you almost feel like you've learned your lessons. A lot of times, most of us, we hope we've learned by that point, the lessons we're here to learn, and can then turn around and help others now at this point, help them in the same difficulties that they're undergoing because you've experienced something similar. So they call that period the sage period, like the wisdom period in our lives. So a lot of it can be predicted of when those things happen. I'm currently in my midlife crisis, so no surprise. I was like, jump the ship, going to astrology, doing something totally different than what I was doing before. Like it can be seen there, I mean, and things manifest in all different ways for people. It's really up to how open they are, how interested. You can have a midlife crisis and decide to buy a red Ferrari, or you can, go get an astrology book. It can manifest itself in widely different ways.
Or you can do both.
You can certainly.
Yeah. So Brene Brown calls it a midlife becoming.
Yes. And I would say that's a more accurate description of it. It's not a crisis. It's just a moment where we pause and we look at the first half of our lives and we say, okay, what did I like about that? And what do I want to do differently moving forward? Who do I want to be now? So it's a beautiful thing.
It is. Hence my little Lexus sports car that I have and group Stay Wild Child.
All beautiful manifestations.
All becoming. So, all right. So tell us a little bit about, I know we've got some big dates coming up. Have you already researched and looked into those? I figured. Okay. I figured.
It's all prepared. I've got Virgo rising. We talked about this. So I have all these little detailed pieces of myself that I'm like, certain areas of my life, I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, go with the flow. Other areas, I'm like, I have to know and write a list. So
sure.
Astrology is one of those things because there are lots of dates to keep in mind. We are coming up on a big date this week, in fact.
Right.
So Thursday.
I think I'm going to be with you. Are you going to be there on the 12th?
I'm not, unfortunately. I wish I was because I just really want to be a part of the meditation and everything too. Yeah. And I love that class. The Magic Box class is amazing. So anyway, we have a full moon in Gemini, which is really interesting because it's happening at 12 degrees after the hour, depending on your time zone. So in the East Coast, it's actually happening at 12:12 a.m. on December 12th. So crazy.
Wow, that's a lot of 12s.
A lot of 12s. So Central Time, it will be at 11:12 p.m., but you still get the energy of it on the 12th day. So there's a lot of 12s in there, which we know 12s reduce down to a 3 in numerology, which is all about creation. So technically Thursday is 333, which is an amazing manifestation date. It's beautiful to bring clarity, to bring light, to boost of communications, especially since this full moon is happening in Gemini, which is a sign all about communication. So this is a perfect time. Full moons we know are good for releases, to release any mental stories that we're telling ourselves, any anxiety that you might be having or experiencing, that brain that's nonstop running, because Gemini is a very quick moving sign, it's ruled by Mercury. So it's all about the brain and the mental stimulation. And sometimes we have to quiet that down. So it's a good time to release any of those stories. It's also a good idea to maybe not speak your mind on that day, like to pause. Full moons can be a little bit more emotional sometimes. We might say things we don't always mean. So it's more of an opportunity to be internal and reflective than saying
it's not like, hey, I got something
exactly,
to say.
because that might come up. You might have the urge to do that to somebody. So we want to have a little bit of a pause there. But it is a beautiful day, and it is work to, again, I just focus on that, releasing the old stories. Really releasing the old stories, and then taking the moment to like, what do I want to create now? Like, what's next? What's the fun things that I can come up with in that way? It's a great day for connecting with people that you really care about. Is a lovely time for that as well. Then, oh my gosh, like the dates just keep hitting. We have on December 26th, we have an eclipse. And it's a solar eclipse in Capricorn, and we're likely already feeling energies of eclipses. The energy starts around a month in advance. And solar eclipses usually bring in new things. So it's shining the light, it's bringing in something new into your life. And because it's in the sign of Capricorn rules our work life and our public reputations. So in often ways, it's going to bring something around work new into your life. For some people, it could be a new job, could be a promotion, could be new clients, could be anything, can manifest in that way, but it will happen in your work life or your public reputation life. Like you might suddenly be on stage speaking in front of people, something that's going to bring light in there. Eclipses are notorious for having drama surrounding them. So I always like to give people that awareness, because oftentimes you can mitigate some of that. And the more we resist is usually when the more drama happens. So if you can kind of be in the flow and let things, ease through, whether you need to meditate a lot more during that time or whatever, finding that ease will be really important, because drama just tends to happen. And it may not be for you. It could be the people around you that are experiencing a lot of drama. So something to keep in mind.
So it's eclipses in general then?
Eclipses in general. So this one that's happening on the 26th will be in Capricorn. So it's definitely bringing new things into your life around your work. On the back end of that, because the eclipses usually happen, not always, but usually happen in pairs, we're in the Capricorn Cancer eclipse cycle. That will end mid 2020. So this one that we're having on the 26th, we have a lunar eclipse then in Cancer on January 10th. And a lunar eclipse,
does that mean the moon is in Cancer then?
Yes, the moon is in Cancer at that time.
I think that is my moon sign. Okay.
You might feel it a little bit more intensely, just FYI. Okay. So the moon being in Cancer, a lunar eclipse basically closes things out. So if a solar eclipse is bringing something in, the lunar eclipse is removing something. It can mean like you've completed a project. So it doesn't have to be bad that something's going away. It could be, I finished this major project that I was working on and now that's done and I'm moving on. It can also mean things that are no longer serving you are being removed. And sometimes we don't always want to let those things go. So it can also be challenging with, again, drama surrounding it. So in this instance, it's happening in Cancer, and Cancer is all about the home and family. So you might be experiencing family drama. People might have that. You might find they need to sell their house, or they might, have children leaving home for the first time. So all of those are types of eclipse events that can happen in the Cancer sign. So we have this Cancer Capricorn cycle that's been going on since mid 2018. Our eclipse cycles are about 2 years. So you can think back over the last 18 months, kind of some of the dramatic things that have happened in your life, and can be attributed back to some of the eclipses that we had. So this next set of Cancer Capricorn eclipses is the second to the last one in this cycle. In 2020, we're going to be in the second half going to be picking up the Sagittarius Gemini cycle, which has a lot to do with our communication, our learning, travel, understanding of the world, immediate world around us, our close proximity, as well as the outer world around us, like the international space as well. So it'll be fun and interesting to see how all of that manifests.
Right.
The big lessons I have are just around the themes for 2020. I know we've talked a little bit about this with Andrea before, but 2020 reduces down to a 22. It's a master number in numerology. It's the master builder. And it also has the energy of a 4, so all about foundations. So this next year is really about building foundations for your future. It's planting the seeds like we talked about so that we can harvest at a later time. all of this energy that we're going to start the year off with is in Capricorn, which is an earth sign. So it's all about, really being intentional with what you want to create and build and make. It doesn't mean that it has to like be completely grown and ready by the end of 2020, but you're planting the seeds for the long term at this point. We have an event happening on January 12th where it hasn't happened in 500 years, where we will have Jupiter. I have to get my notes out here. We have Jupiter, Mercury, Pluto, and Saturn all conjunct, which means they're all next to each other in Capricorn. So that's going to be a very magical day. Everything is basically going to be like, okay, we have the great expander and the great contractor next to each other, next to the planet of intense transformation. So it's all about looking down at what are you building? What are you valuing? What needs to change in your life? And it's really a year about work, and not in a bad way, but work to prepare us for the future. Like, what is it that we need to do? What do we need to clean up and clean out? What do we need to transform within ourselves to make us ready for that amazing future that we're trying to build, for that next level of things? So it's actually really cool, but a little bit intense. So there might be some drama around that. There could be feelings of just exhaustion, just complete, I'm tired and I'm wiped out. That's okay. Get rest, whatever you need at those moments. That's important to do. Some other things that I wanted to touch on, let me go. We have, for the whole year, we have the 4 of the 5 outer planets. So the outer planets are more generational. They're impacting large groups of people. We have 4 of the 5 of them in earth signs. So we've got Uranus and Taurus that moved into Taurus this year. And then you have Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, all in Capricorn, earth signs. So it's really about the physical world and our physical space and our physical bodies, like anything that you can touch and feel in those earth things. So the year's going to require some patience and some steadiness. Patience is not my favorite thing, although I've gotten better at it. I can't say I'm an expert, but it will require that. It's gonna take some time for us to do the right things, to take the right steps. But there will be, I think, at the same time, a level of confidence in knowing what we're doing. So if you can get clear here at the beginning of the year, set those intentions, especially on 12/12, of what you want to build and create, and really be intentional about the steps forward you take. You're gonna have an amazing, beautiful harvest at the end of it, for lack of a better analogy. Some of the other things to keep in mind for this time is that it's a year covered in retrogrades. So retrograde can be scary for some people.
I love the way you explained it, though. Do
we have explanation. Every year, there's at least 3 to 4 retrogrades in Mercury. That's the fastest moving planet, closest to the sun. So it gets around the Earth a lot faster than the rest of them. And so that's typical. We usually see those, 3 to 4 times a year. We have 3 coming up in 2020. So we had 3 this last year. Easy. We also will have a Venus retrograde, which Venus goes retrograde every 18 months. So the last one we had was 2018. So we'll have another one in 2020. And then we will again then have a Mars retrograde. So I'm talking about all the personal planets that impact us more directly than the outer ones. So the Mars retrograde happens every 2 years, and it's happening at the last half of 2020. So with that, there's not a lot of clear energy. There's not a lot of forward direction or forward movement as much as we might want it, even though we have all of these signs, all these other planets in Capricorn, which is all about moving forward. We're going to need to do that work internally. So a retrograde is a beautiful time in our lives where we get to do the inside work, and we get to slow down, and we get to rest. So we think about any time for any retrograde, it doesn't matter if it's Mercury, Venus, whatever. You want to focus on things that start with an RE, like reevaluate, reassess, remember. So it's thinking back on the past, it's resting. Anything that, you can come up with an RE is probably the thing you should do. So it's not necessarily a time to launch a brand new long-term goal. Like, I'm going to launch a new business and I'm going to do it in 2020. Maybe not the best time if you want it to last a while, which is I was looking to get mine out this year because of that. But if you're fine with something being short-term, it's a great time to do any short-term types of projects. It's a wonderful time to go back over past ideas that you might have had and start working on those again. Maybe somebody wanted to write a book and they never got around to it. You had that idea already, so it's a great time to bring that back out and say, okay, what would I write? What would it what would it be like? What, maybe I want to revise a copy. So again, an RE, revising things,
Right.
revising your plans. It's a really a beautiful time. It can seem slow and stagnant to some of
Love.
your quicker
Right.
energies, like your air and fire energies are like, I just want to keep going. So it can feel a little frustrating in those moments. But if you think about energy itself, you can't go, 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 go. If you think of a balloon, blowing up a balloon, at some point, if you just keep putting air in, it's going to pop. You've got to have that moment of balance. In that same with energy, like if I'm going to go 60 miles an hour, I'm going to need to slow down at some point too. And a retrograde just gives us that moment of slowing down and taking stock and reevaluating, okay, I thought I wanted to go this direction. Do I still want that direction? Because maybe I do, or maybe I won't. Maybe I want to turn left, and that's okay too. But it gives you that opportunity. So it's really cool. I know it gets a bad rap, but I like retrogrades. It's fine. There's some good things to avoid, like making major purchases and signing contracts, all those things, if you can put them off. I would say next year, since there really is no clear energy except for the beginning of the year, it's going to be really hard to not do certain things. So in those cases, just really read the fine print, buy the extended warranty, whatever it takes to get yourself a little bit more protected in those scenarios, because you can't just avoid life either.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So we've got I think that, 12/12, it sounds like we need to get busy.
Yeah.
It needs to be a day that we really focus on what our intention is, right? Moving into 2020.
Focus on your intentions. Focus on those long-term visions, the big things you want to do. It doesn't mean you have to get them all done, but again, planting those seeds for, okay, I want to do this and I want to be this, we want to start planting those seeds now. But it's also a great time for releasing the stories, like going inside and say, okay, what stories am I still telling myself that aren't true? What limitations have I put around myself? What do I need to let go of in order to accomplish these bigger things, these bigger visions that I want? So, that work is a little bit more quiet, a little bit more intense, maybe not as fun as the daydreaming part, but it's still very necessary, because that's the stuff you want to clean out to make it a clean slate to go into. How do I create now all these wonderful things?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, very good. Well, oh my gosh, so much information and such a cool way to look at your life plan, and to just, I've loved like just peeking into astrology, and now I even want to go a little bit deeper now that I've talked to you. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And I want to make sure that I include all the ways that people can contact you after I post this live video, and then I'll do it for sure on YouTube as well.
Perfect. Yay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dana, for joining us. And as always, we do this every Monday at noon Central Standard Time. And I'll post all of Dana's information in the comments below. And I'll also post it, like I said, on the YouTube link as well. So thanks, you guys, for joining us. And y'all have an awesome rest of your Monday.
Thanks, Nicole. Bye.
Thanks, y'all.